What's good, everybody? Welcome to Midweek Worship at Two Cities Church. Hey, I want to thank you for joining us. My name is Jeff, and if you want to know more about us or about this broadcast, if you look below me in the notes, you'll see a link to a YouTube video. Would you go ahead and check that thing out after this episode is over with? Because you'll learn more about our church, about who I am, about this broadcast and why we do it, why we come into your homes or into coffee shops during the middle of the week to help you understand who our God is, to help you understand the faith. We've been unpacking for you God's revelation. Now, we spent months last year describing very specific ways that God reveals himself. And then at the beginning of this year, we started unpacking the general ways that God reveals himself. We talked about a God who reveals himself through nature in Romans chapter 1. The earth itself declares God's existence. And then we talked about last week that God is more than just exists, but he's also the creator God. And from the book of Isaiah, we learned that God not only created the universe, but he created you, and he created you because he loves you and wants to redeem you. Well, today we want to build on that. We want to talk about the goodness of our God, the kind of goodness that, frankly, everybody on earth can see. And this is sometimes referred to as God's common grace or God's common goodness, his goodness or his grace to all people, even those hardened atheists that deny his existence, even those people that hate God and actively grit their teeth and clench their fists against him. He's even good to them and doesn't wipe them off the face of the earth when they turn their back on him. Well, I want us to sing to this God that we worship. I want us to study this God that we worship. I really want us to surrender or submit our lives at the end of this broadcast to this God that we worship. So in order to do that, let's start with a song. You'll recognize these words because what we're going to do is sing the Lord's Prayer. The words are on the screen, but this is something that reminds us that he is our Father and we are totally, daily dependent on him. So why don't you go ahead and sing along with this song, and then we'll come back and open up the scriptures. Sing along, will you?
Sing Yeshua with me.
Kingdom yours is the power yours.
In the book of Acts, in chapter 14, the great apostle Paul and his traveling companion Barnabas are traveling from town to town, and they want everybody to know about God's goodness. So they go into churches and synagogues and they start to teach people about God, and many people's lives are being changed. I'm giving you the background to a verse that we're going to look at from Acts chapter 14 in just a moment. After traveling to the town of Lycum, Paul and Barnabas meet together and they start to explain to the crowds about the goodness of God. They see a guy in the crowd who is born with a birth defect and he can't walk. Now, in Old Testament, New Testament times, most people believe that if you were born with a birth defect, God wanted you to be like that, and no one, and here's where many even learned scholars, religious scholars believe, no one, not even God, could heal you if you were born lame. This man has been born lame. And as Paul and Barnabas are teaching in the synagogue, they can see that this man showed up because he wants to be healed. And so they tell him, basically command him to go ahead and stand up. And right there in front of everybody who's known this man their whole lives, they've known this man has been lame their entire lives, he stands up and he walks around in their midst. And the people are so blown away that they say, the gods have come down in our midst. Now, this is a Greek town, so when they say gods, they're referring to those Greek gods that are up on Mount Olympus. They've come down from Mount Olympus to be among us, and Paul and Barnabas are two of the deities, the gods. They're actually so blown away by this event that they want to go sacrifice animals to Paul and Barnabas and worship Paul and Barnabas, and they stop them. And they say, don't do this. We're just humans. It is actually through the power of God that this man was able to be healed. And then the Apostle Paul says something to this crowd that I think is profound, not just for them, but for all people. This tells us about the kind of God that he is, even for people that don't know him, even for people that deny him. The Apostle Paul says in Acts chapter 14, verse 17, I'll put it on the screens for you. He says this, ... although he, God, did not leave himself without a witness, since he did what is good by giving you rain from heaven and fruitful seasons and filling you with food and your hearts with joy. This is Acts chapter 14, verse 17. Now the ... means that there is something in verse 16 that Paul says. And basically in the verse before this, he says, listen, God tried to show himself to people, and a lot of them, they turned their back on him. They denied him. They walked away from him. And Paul is insinuating God could have blown them up right there on the spot for it, but he didn't. Instead, he left them to know a way to know him even when they turn their backs on him. This is kind of what he's saying in verse 16, summarized for you. And then in verse 17, he tells you how God did that. And I want you to pay close attention to a couple of words here. He says that he did what is good. And he did what is good for you, even if you don't know him, even if you deny him, even if you have no desire to get to know the God that created you. Paul says, I can prove to you that he exists, and I can prove to you not only that he exists, and here's what I want you to walk away with today. I can prove to you that he is a good God, and here's the proof. Rain comes down from heaven, and it waters the fields so that you have food to eat. And the seasons come and the seasons go so that there's food in your belly and so that there is joy in your heart. And Paul is saying, you can't take credit for that. The scientists can't take credit for that. The farmers can't take credit for that. The farmers can do the work to prepare the ground and put the seed in the ground, but the farmers can't make it rain and they can't make the sun shine. And without those two things, you don't have food to eat. So the proof that God exists, get this, and that he is a good God, is the fact that there's rain falling even on people that hate him and deny God. The fact that the sun comes up and goes down and the seasons come and go and there's food on your table, even for people that clench their fists and turn their back against God. And another brilliant mind of the church, John Calvin, once put it this way, one of the brilliant early thinkers of the Protestant faith said, faith, however imperfect, nevertheless possesses a perfect righteousness, because it has respect to nothing but the gratuitous goodness of God. I realize some of these words might be confusing to you. Let me just describe those two words, gratuitous goodness. What that phrase means is there is nothing forcing God to be good. There is nothing making him want to be good to you. God chooses, and out of his own nature and for his own reasons, he chooses to be good to you. And our faith, even if our faith is imperfect and broken, our faith in a good God is a strong, powerful faith. And this faith is strong and powerful because of the God that we live in. We love the good God that we serve, not because of the strength of our faith. This gratuitous goodness that John Calvin is describing tells us, listen, the universe that you see around you, it didn't come by chance. And the God who created it, he didn't just take his hands off the wheel and let the car go flying off the dangerous mountain cliff into a ball of fire. He loves you, and he stays involved with you. And the proof that he loves you, that he is a good God, is the fact that the sun came up today and that you have breath in your lungs. And you didn't do anything to cause those things, nor did you do anything to deserve those things. So I'll just leave you with a very natural question about the goodness of God. This is a question that you might want to reflect on, even when days are hard. How good was God to you today? And now I'm asking you to take stock in just some of the simple, good things that God does for all people every day. And oftentimes we don't even notice, or we totally take them for granted. So why don't you just think about that? And then maybe as this broadcast ends, you would pray a prayer of thanksgiving to God for some of the good things that he's done for you today. Thanks for joining me. See you back here next week as we wrap up this discussion about the general revelation of God. See you next time.